What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I know it's been quite a few weeks since we did some coverage on the 2022 Toyota Tacoma, and in today's episode I'm going to show you guys how to install a TRD skid plate on the underside of the front of a 2016 to 2023 third gen Toyota Tacoma. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get the skid plate installed on the 2022 Toyota Tacoma. Okay, first things first, Toyota TRD skid plate, the part number. Let me show you guys what's going on the part number here. So the description of this part is a Tacoma skid plate, and here's your part number for your reference if you'd like to order one for your truck. And this is actually made in Canada, a little FYI. Okay, enough about the box and the part number. Let's go ahead and put some emphasis on the actual skid plate itself. So this is a TRD skid plate. It actually comes standard on the TRD Pro models. And I believe this bolts on to the SR, the SR5, the TRD Sport, TRD Off-Road, and also the Limited as well. Because I believe the bolt patterns is the same exact on the chassis of the truck. So we got some red TRD letters right here, so you can't mistake that for a knockoff. And then this is basically a thick aluminum piece of metal right here. Let me show you the thickness of this thing. Okay, so if you take a look at the edge right there, this is a 1/4 inch thick aluminum plate. I mean, this is going to provide some excellent protection on the trails. So it looks like got an access panel right here to access the oil filter housing itself. And then we got a hole on the backside over here. I think this might be the engine drain plug. And then right here below the access cover for the oil filter, you got this bulge out. So this is basically the jacking point that's going to be on the underside of the skid plate right here. So if you need to jack up the entire front of the truck, you put your jack on the circle right here. It'll actually have some support. Okay, now regarding how this thing fastens to the underside of your Tacoma, it's actually held in place with 6 bolts. And there's actually washers behind each bolt. And on the back side, you're gonna see these metal shim spacers right here with these lock washers. It's basically a quick view on the underside of the skid plate right here. And then taking a closer look at the label on the underside, Toyota Genuine Accessories. And we got Toyota TO430-001 skid plate 1913. Okay, so my particular Tacoma has a 2-inch lift kit on there, which gives us a little bit more clearance on the underside. But in order to show you guys what's exactly going on, I'm gonna go ahead, drive this truck up on some ramps just so I can get some extra clearance. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get the truck raised up a little bit so I can show you guys what's going on. Okay, the Tacoma is safely supported on front ramps and actually blocked off the rear tires just in case. I also have this thing in gear with the parking brake, so safety first when you're working on the underside of your truck. Okay, let's take a look on the underside and let's see what's going on. All right, taking a look at the front underside of my Tacoma. This is the original skid plate that came on the truck. So this is the TRD Sport model. I'm not sure if this comes on the SR and the SR5 and the Limited, but I know if you get the off-road version, it has an additional plate. So that additional plate will be covering this area right here. So the Sport model does not have this. Now I've got one complication right here with the installation of this new skid plate. So I'm not sure if you've seen my other video with the condensate drain tube, but I've got this hooked up on the firewall. So whenever you have the AC running, this directs the AC condensate drain tube onto the ground and not to the top of the frame. So we might actually have to drill a small hole on this TRD skid plate in order to utilize this drain tube right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by removing the old skid plate. So with the TRD Sport, there's a 12mm bolt right here. There's another 12mm bolt right here. And then right by the lower control arm, there's a 12mm bolt right here. And then right here by the jacking point, which is this cylinder right here, there's a 12mm bolt. So once I have 4 12mm bolts removed, I'm gonna go ahead and actually slide this thing forward because you got some hooks right here on the front. So that hook right there and that hook right there. So basically you need to take the skid plate, pull it forward, and then drop it down. Okay, let's go ahead and remove the OEM skid plate. Alrighty, the TRD Sport skid plate is officially removed. In order to do so, I use my 12mm ratchet in order to get those 4 12mm bolts off. Okay, so now that the Sport skid plate is removed, we can do a side-by-side comparison of the TRD skid plate we're about to install. Obviously, you can see there's a lot more coverage behind the skid plate as opposed to the TRD Sport model. Now, just take a look at the materials of the skid plates. So the Sport model, this is actually a thin steel right here. And then taking a look at this TRD skid plate, this is 1/4-inch aluminum. So it's a lot more robust right here. And obviously, these bolts right here are a lot larger than 12mm. And in addition, there's actually 6 mounting points on this TRD skid plate as opposed to a Sport skid plate. Okay, now in terms of the bolt locations for the TRD skid plate, let me show you guys where these bolts line up on the underside of the truck. So let's start off the driver's side front. This bolt right here. Okay, this reinforcing brace, it's got 2 bolts on it. You want to go ahead and remove the one on the inside right here. I believe this is a 17mm. Go ahead and remove that. Okay, and then we've got the front passenger bolt. Let me show you where that goes. So you got a brace on the passenger side as well. You want to go ahead and remove this bolt. So there's not 2 bolts like the driver's side. There's just a single bolt right there. So go ahead and remove this one. All right, and then we got the driver's side center bolt. Let me show you where that goes. All right, going back to the brace on the driver's side, just follow this along to the back. You're gonna go ahead and leave this middle bolt in position, and you wanna go ahead and remove the rearmost bolt right there. So this bolt, go ahead and remove that one. And then we've got a passenger side center bolt. Let me show you where that mounts to. And again, we got the passenger side brace. Just follow it towards the back. Go ahead and leave the center bolt in position and take out the rearmost bolt. Go ahead and remove that one. Okay, and then we have the driver's side rear bolt, which is smaller than the front 2. And then if you follow the rear lower control arm on this cross brace right here, you're gonna see this hole. There's threads right in there. So that's where that mounts to. And last but not least, we got the rear passenger side bolt. You got the same rear cross member. Just follow this towards the passenger side, and you're gonna see a hole right here with some threads in there. And that's where that last bolt goes to. Now I'm gonna figure out if I'm actually gonna modify the skid plate from my AC condensate drain line, or if I'm gonna relocate this over to this opening over here. I haven't decided yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and mock the skid plate in position and see what kind of modification I need to make, and I'll make a judgment call. So let me go ahead and take care of that, and then we'll go next step. Okay, so underneath the truck, putting focus on the rear cross member for the rearmost bolts, I need to figure out where the hole's gonna be for this AC condensate drain line right there. So I took a measuring tape, went from the passenger side mounting hole all the way to the driver's side on this hole. And then I drew a line on the south side of this hole right here with a Sharpie. And took a piece of tape, put a tape over that line, and pulled a measurement from this mounting hole to the center of this, which is 3 inches. And then from the center of this hole down the tape line, I came up with 1 1/4 inches. So once I actually put the skid plate on the back side, I'm gonna draw the pencil line on the inside of the skid plate, and then I'll be able to measure over from that bolt 3 inches, and then from that line right there, 1 1/4 inches, and that's where the hole needs to be. I just need to figure out the diameter of this hose right here. I'll go ahead and take some measurements right there, and then we'll go ahead and start drilling on the skid plate. So now this is an extra step if you don't have the AC condensate drain line. A lot of people have routed this in different methods, but I figured this is the best method right here. Keeps it away from everything. All right, so let me go ahead and take some measurements. We'll go ahead and drill a hole on the skid plate so we can get this AC condensate drain line pulled through. And then we can go ahead and mount the skid plate. Alrighty, the front passenger side 17mm bolt is removed. Moving on down the line, You got the rear 17mm bolt removed. And then working our way back to the driver's side, you got the inside 17mm bolt removed. Working our way back, we got the rearmost 17mm bolt removed. Okay, on the back side, this is where the rear bolt's gonna go. And on the passenger side, this is where the rear bolt's gonna go. So I'm gonna go ahead and carefully position myself on the underside of the truck with a skid plate on top of my stomach and actually push this thing up. I think my game plan is I'm gonna try to attach the middle bolts first and then work my way to the back, pull that condensate line tube through the hole I just drilled, and then go ahead and loosely attach the rear hardware and then work my way to the front and get those attached. So I don't want to tighten everything up just yet, so I'll make sure everything's snug, and then maybe we can kind of finagle this in position, and then we'll snug it down for the final steps. So we got the torque specs for that. I'll go over that in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get the skid plate mounted to the underside of the Tacoma. We're getting close here. All right, so taking a look at the instructions that came with the TRD skid plate, you got some torque specs here. So let's go ahead and focus on the front and center bolts. Those are the big ones. So that's B and C. So if you took a look at the graph, B and C is indicating 33 foot-pounds on those 4 bolts. And as far as the rear bolts are concerned, that's number D. So D is rated at 21 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and torque those bottom 6 bolts to spec. Front one's at 33. Rear's at 21. Let's go and do this. Alrighty guys, check it out. Got the TRD skid plate finally installed. Let's go over some details real quick here. Now the torque spec for the front and the center bolts, that's rated at 33 foot-pounds. That's perfectly acceptable. Now one note on the rear 12mm bolts right there in the passenger and the driver's side. I've read somewhere that the torque spec is overrated at 21 foot-pounds, so I played it safe and torqued it down to 15 foot-pounds. So just a little FYI for you guys. Now looking right next to this 12mm bolt, check out the condensate line. This is the hole that we drilled while I was on the ground, and that condensate line is pretty clean right there. Nice tight fit, almost OEM. So now if you guys are interested in this condensate line drain mod on your Tacoma, let me go and pop the hood and show you what's going on real quick. All right, so taking a closer look under the hood, particularly the passenger side, let me go and show you guys that condensate line drain mod. Okay, so taking a closer look down the engine bay, if you can see that stub out right there, but there's actually a connection for a rubber hose, and that basically goes down through the cross member onto the ground. Now, for whatever reason, Toyota likes to stub this thing out, and the condensate line constantly drips onto the frame rail, which will promote rust. So this is a popular modification for Toyota Tacomas. So now, if you guys have any interest in doing this modification to your Tacoma, I'll go ahead and leave the link down below. And this should prolong the life of the frame of your Toyota Tacoma, just a little FYI. All right, and the last details of the skid plate, you got an opening right here for your oil drain bolt. And this little bulge right here where the circle's at, this is your indentation for the central jacking point. And then this access cover right here, that's for your oil filter. So it looks like you got 4 Allen head bolts to hold this in position. All right, guys, so what do you think of the TRD skid plate? You like this silver plate better, or you like the OEM Sport black plate better? Now, one other small detail is my custom built license plate bracket right here that I got mounted on the underside of the bumper. I thought this was gonna be the way of the skid plate, but turns out it wasn't, so we got plenty of clearance right there. So turns out pretty good, and I don't have to drill into the front bumper right there. That's a good thing. Okay, here's a breakdown of the tools I used in order to install the TRD skid plate. 3/8 ratchet, 3/8 torque wrench, 3/8 extension, 12mm socket, 17mm socket, and then actually I used a floor jack with a rag in order to prop up the skid plate in position, and then I can tighten them up with the ratchet. So do yourself a favor and get a floor jack and a rag and just prop it up, and makes things a lot easier. And if you've got a condensate line run through the cross member like I've got, you're gonna go ahead and get a drill with a 3/4 inch bit, measuring tape, and a file and some pliers to pull the hose through. So that's basically a breakdown of all the tools I used in order to install the TRD skid plate. Okay, one small detail I forgot to mention, and I don't know if you can see this little chip right here, but it's not too big. It's right in the front corner. This came damaged in shipping. So there was a chip right here, and there was a small indentation on the back side of the plate. So I reached out to the vendor when I bought this, and they actually gave me a $55 discount. So this thing turned out to be about $235 shipped, which ain't too bad. I think Toyota lists this plate for around $400 FYI. So I picked this thing up while I was like a 30% off sale plus free shipping, so it was the time to buy this thing. So if you're interested in this TRD skid plate, just do yourself a favor, wait till there's a sale on Toyota OEM accessories with free shipping, and go ahead and place your order. All right, one final look of the TRD skid plate. What do you guys think? I mean, I think this thing looks really robust. It's really gonna protect this thing once I take this thing on trails. Yes, I do plan on taking this thing off-road. I'm not gonna buy a truck and keep this thing on the street, so hopefully while I'm on some light trails, this will do its job in protecting the underside of the engine right there. I'm pretty happy, and the installation wasn't too bad. It was just a little time consuming, and I took my time on this. Alrighty guys, that wraps up the installation of the TRD skid plate on the 2016 to 2023 3rd Gen Toyota Tacoma. Now, installation was relatively straightforward. Basically, I had to line up the 6 bolts and tighten things down and make sure it torqued the spec. Now, I had a special instance where I had to drill a hole in the backside for the condensate line, and if you don't have that condensate line hole like I've got, it's gonna be real easy. Anyways, what do you think of the way this skid plate looks? I think it looks pretty cool with the TRD letters on there and the silver color, but I didn't buy it specifically for looks. It's basically designed to protect the underside of a truck when you're going forward and whatnot. So can't wait to take this Tacoma off-road on some trails, and I'll go ahead and give you guys an update of how this thing performs. Anyways, if you found this video helpful or entertaining, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic day.